So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 30 minutes. The idea is that you get to cover your current affairs on a daily basis, but you don't have to spend your entire day just reading the newspaper. Okay? Now just watching this lecture within 30 minutes would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Why? Well, revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram platform. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay, so here we go. So, daily current affairs 21st June 2025. Like I said before, that we are going to combine yesterday's and today's current affairs. Okay, so what are the important topics that we shall cover? First of all, there was an editorial in the Indian Express about critical minerals and the vulnerabilities with respect to the supply of critical minerals for India. So we'll talk about this. Then you must be knowing this already, okay, that recently government has proposed to put a cap on the AC temperatures, or a minimum threshold, not threshold but a minimum limit on the AC temperatures. AC temperatures cannot be below 20 degrees Celsius and cannot be more than 28 degrees Celsius. Now the question is, why is government doing this? Why does government care about what are you doing in your room and how cool you make your room? Okay, there is a big reason behind this. So we'll talk about this. Then recently a very small news item, it's GSY. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Well, the government has launched the fourth phase of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, and government has said that on that area where the road is being constructed, okay, there should be a QR code for public to scan and raise their complaints. Okay, government wants public feedback with respect to the quality of roads that are being built under this Yojana. So there should be a QR code on the site where people can scan, get all the information related to that road, and can also raise their complaints. Okay, this is a thing related to good governance. But nonetheless, PM Gram Sadak Yojana comes in the news because of this news item. Okay, it becomes important for us to know about this. So we will talk about Gram Sadak Yojana in brief. And in the end, we'll talk about Non-Proliferation Treaty. Because recently, Israel attacked Iran under the guise of Iran possessing nuclear weapons or being very close to possessing nuclear weapons. But Iran is a member of Non-Proliferation Treaty, under which it cannot have nuclear weapons. So what is this Non-Proliferation Treaty? By the way, Israel is not part of NPT. Okay, so what is this NPT? We'll talk about this. Okay, so these are the four topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number one, and that is India and critical minerals. Now you see, minerals are a very important part of human civilization. Whenever in history human civilization has advanced, well, minerals have been the foundation of that advancement. Now how so? I'll give you a few examples. Look, you see, back then, thousands of years ago, well, humans were hunter-gatherers, okay? They only knew how to make stone tools. But then, copper was discovered, and we entered Chalcolithic age, where we could make tools made up of copper. Then we discovered tin, and we also knew how to make an alloy of copper and tin, and we discovered bronze. Then we entered the Bronze Age phase. Indus Valley civilization is part of that. Then we discovered iron, and our civilization advanced, and it advanced with the discovery of each and every mineral. In 19th century, well, human beings started using coal on a large scale, and that powered the industrial revolution of Europe. Okay, coal was used in steam engines, coal was used to do everything. Okay, ships, everything. So industrial revolution was powered by coal. Then in 20th century, we discovered crude oil and natural gas. And 20th century advancements of human civilization were backed by that. Now we are in the 21st century. And in this 21st century, well, we are further advancing ahead. Okay, human civilization is going a step ahead. Whether we talk about AI, big data, green technologies, everything. Okay, human beings are going a step ahead with these new technologies, right? Now, these new technologies are powered by critical minerals, and whichever country has access to these critical minerals would advance ahead, and whichever country lacks the access of these critical minerals, well, that country would fall behind. Critical minerals are the core now of every country's foreign policy. Okay, 20th century was all about geopolitics related to oil and gas. Okay, the reason why America was interested in Middle East was because Middle East possessed oil. Today, geopolitics, foreign policy of all the countries is related to access to the supply chains of critical minerals, because critical minerals power everything that we know now. Okay, so what is the importance of critical minerals and how vulnerable India is with respect to the supply of these critical minerals? Let's talk about that. Okay, so India and critical minerals. Now you should know this, that well, I have explained to you the entire story since hunter-gatherers, Paleolithic age, Chalcolithic age, Bronze age, everything. Okay, 21st century is all about critical minerals. And why? Well, 21st century has seen two developments, and these two developments have increased the hunger for critical minerals. Now, what are these two developments? Okay, dawn of critical minerals. Number one, people have become conscious of climate change, right? And to protect ourselves from climate change, well, we need access to technologies like solar energy, technologies like wind energy, technologies like electric vehicles, right? Now, we want to save ourselves from climate change, and for that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, we need to transition into a new form of doing things. Okay, so we won't produce electricity from coal, we would produce electricity from solar. We won't travel in diesel or petrol cars, we will travel in electric vehicles, right? So we have to do this transition. This transition is known as green transition. Okay, transition to solar, wind, electric vehicles, and many more. Now, this green transition cannot happen without critical minerals. I'll give you some examples. Okay, look, well, the thing is that for green transition, we need solar, we need wind, right? The problem with solar and wind energy is intermittency. What do you mean by intermittency? Well, solar energy would be produced only when the sun is shining bright and high in the sky. At night time or during cloudy weather, you can't produce solar energy. So what you can do is that when the sun is shining bright and high in the sky and you produce surplus solar energy, you store that surplus solar energy in batteries, right? So you need a good battery infrastructure, storage infrastructure, electricity storage infrastructure if you really want to transition to solar and wind. Well, these batteries require certain minerals like lithium is required, cobalt is required, nickel is required. And whichever country has access to these lithium, cobalt, nickel and other minerals would be able to easily transition towards green technologies. Same is the case with electric vehicles. Electric vehicles also require batteries, and these batteries require lithium, cobalt, nickel. So lithium, cobalt, nickel are critical minerals. They are critical for any country who wants to do this green transition. Okay, so this is development number one. The second development is of the 21st century is fourth industrial revolution. Now, currently industry is going through a rapid transition. Okay, not just rapid, it is very high in scale also. Okay, we are transforming the way we do business, we are transforming the way industries run, and that is because of these new technologies. Okay, they are transforming everything. What are these new technologies? AI, we all know what transformative role AI is playing. Big data analytics. Okay, new communication technologies like 6G, quantum computing, okay, 3D printing. These new technologies are just like coming up very quickly. Clear? Now, whichever country masters these technologies, masters this fourth industrial revolution, will go ahead, and whichever country lags behind, will lag behind permanently or for a very long period of time. Therefore, countries are scrambling for getting access to this fourth industrial revolution or getting on board this train of fourth industrial revolution. Now, all these technology products, whether it's AI, big data, quantum computing, everything, they also require critical minerals. For example, the data centers on which big data and AI chips run, or the data centers on which AI programs run, well, these data centers require copper. In fact, 6G technologies, the hardware used in 6G technologies, okay, 6G mobile telecommunication, the hardware also requires copper. Plus the smartphones require lithium again for batteries, and electric vehicles run on electric motors. These electric motors are made up of rare earth magnets. Rare earth magnets are made up of rare earth elements. So rare earth elements are critical for electric vehicles. So they are critical minerals. So no country can do without access to these critical minerals. Okay? So what is the definition of critical minerals? Well, definition of critical minerals is very simple. Minerals that are very important for national security of a country, because these minerals are used in defense weapons technology also. Minerals that are very important for national security, very important for economic security. Those are critical minerals. Now, based on their own requirements, every country has their own list of critical minerals. Okay, Japan might be having 50 critical minerals, USA might be having 29. India has a list of 30 critical minerals. Okay, so every country has prepared its own list based on the criticality of the minerals they are talking about. Okay, so India has prepared a list of 30 critical minerals. These are those minerals which India considers to be critical for them. Clear? Now, among these 30, copper is there, lithium is there, cobalt is there, nickel is there, rare earth elements are there, everything is there. Clear? These are critical for India. Critical means critical. Emphasize on the word critical. They are very important for India. But the problem is, access to these critical minerals is not that easy for India. And there are good reasons behind that. Okay? What are the reasons? Well, these critical minerals are concentrated in a few hands only. Like, I'll give you a few examples. Look, these critical minerals, you need to understand this. These critical minerals, how do we get them? Okay, first we dig them from the ground. So let's talk about lithium. Okay, so first mining companies dig lithium ores from the ground. This is known as the extraction stage. Okay, then this lithium ore needs to be processed to extract usable lithium, which can be used in batteries. Okay, so there are two stages of getting access to these critical minerals: extraction from the ground, processing. Now hear me out carefully. As far as the extraction stage is concerned, cobalt comes almost exclusively from Congo. 50% of nickel comes from Indonesia. China alone accounts for 2/3 of rare earth elements. Rare earth elements, 2/3 of rare earth elements come from China only. Australia, Chile and China account for majority of lithium. So these critical minerals are only possessed by a handful of countries, and that is just the extraction part. When it comes to processing, China is the dominant player. Okay, 2/3 of the processing of critical minerals takes place in China. For rare earth, this percentage climbs up to 90. So 90% of the processing capacity for rare earth lies with China. And here we are vulnerable because China is not that friendly towards us. Okay, so now India has to work towards getting access to these critical minerals. In fact, getting access to these critical minerals is a cause of concern for not just India, for USA also. Donald Trump's foreign policy is based on critical minerals. Okay, it is completely based on critical minerals. He is being friendly towards those countries which have critical minerals, and he is pushing those countries away which are of no use. So critical minerals are lying at the core of every country's foreign policy. They are that critical, and their supply is restricted by China because China has a chokehold on their supply. Make sense? Okay, all right. Now let's move forward to next news item, and that is cap on air conditioner temperatures. Okay. Now recently government came out with a announcement, and that announcement was that, well, government is going to limit the way you operate your ACs. You cannot basically push the temperature below 20 degrees Celsius as far as your air conditioner is concerned. And you cannot put the temperature above 28 degrees Celsius, again, as far as your AC is concerned. You have to get used to this 20 to 28 degrees Celsius of window. And government says it is quite comfortable. It is not that bad. Okay. Now, why is government concerned with your comfort levels? Why is government concerned with your AC levels? Well, there is a big reason for that. And that reason is ACs consume a lot of power, a lot of electricity. And people who use AC at 18 degrees Celsius, 19 degrees Celsius, they consume a lot of power. Government feels that if government bans usage of AC below 20 degrees Celsius, it would save a lot of electricity, like a lot of electricity. And that is why government has come out with this regulation. Okay, so let's talk about it. So cap on air conditioner temperatures. Government is saying 20 to 28 degrees Celsius. Now why? First of all, you need to know what is the relationship between power consumption and air conditioners. How much power do these ACs consume? Okay. So air conditioner ownership in India has tripled since 2010 and to up to 24 ACs per 100 households because of global warming and because of rising incomes. People can afford ACs, and now summers are also getting very hot. So usage of ACs has increased. More and more people possess ACs. Now, ACs consume a lot of electricity. No other appliance in your home generally consumes that much electricity as your AC does. In fact, 10% of all electricity produced in India goes towards AC. Now that's a big chunk. 10% of electricity in India goes to ACs, air conditioning, to keep us cool during the summers. And Bureau of Energy Efficiency says that raising the AC temperature setting from 20 to 24 degrees Celsius can slash power consumption by 24%. Your bill, electricity bill, would come 24% lower if you use AC between 20 to 24 degrees Celsius. Okay. And if all Indians in India use ACs in this temperature limit, that will save about 6% of the electricity in India overall. Okay, if people use between this range, 6% of electricity can be saved. And the catch is, most of this electricity, 70%, around 70% of electricity produced in India comes from burning coal. And that releases a lot of greenhouse gases. But if you use less electricity, you'll burn less coal. You'd also reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. You'll also reduce the damage you're causing to the climate. So this is not good just for reducing your electricity bill. It is also good for reducing our contribution towards climate change, right? And that is why government is mulling over this proposal. Clear? And India is not new in this. In fact, India won't be the first country to try this. Italy, Spain, Greece and Japan have all implemented similar measures. Italy's Operation Thermostat enforces a 27 degrees Celsius minimum in public buildings. Spain mandates the same. And Italy and Spain are a little cooler than India. So that is why 27 degrees Celsius. Japan recommends 28 degrees Celsius in offices, though it isn't enforced by law. And there are going to be a lot of benefits. You know, collectively, if all Indians use their ACs above 20 degrees Celsius in 3 years, we, all of us, all households can save 18,000 to 20,000 crore in electricity bills. Plus, it would also take India one step closer towards, well, net zero emissions target. India has set itself a net zero emission target by 2070. That in net terms, we won't emit any greenhouse gases by 2070. So this would take us a step closer towards that, right? So that is why, to save power, to save electricity, government is basically thinking about this proposal. Clear? So it's not that government is against your comfort. No. Government is thinking about everyone's comfort, because the more power we consume, the more power we conserve, okay, save, the more power would be left for other needy people or needy requirements. Clear? So that is why it is a good proposal. Now let's talk about another issue, and that is QR code on Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Now, the government has said, I'll tell you what was in the news. Okay, the government has said that all the projects that are being considered under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, basically when the construction would be going on and the construction would be completed, there should be a QR code on the site so that government gets public feedback. Any citizen of India or anyone, any resident of that place where the Gram Sadak has been constructed, well, he can go scan that QR code, get all the information with respect to that project, plus can also raise issues, give feedback, raise complaints. So this is an example of good governance and people's participation in India's economic growth story. Okay, this is a very good thing. I mean, the government has given a term for this: Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. Okay, or the government uses the term Jan Bhagidari, people's participation in India's growth story. So this is just one example to that. Okay, but that is not that important for us. Okay, what is important for us is what is this Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. So let's talk about this Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Okay, so PMGSY, I'm so sorry it's written J, it is PMGSY. So Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, if you literally translate into English, it is Prime Minister Rural Road Program. Okay, so basically there are many villages in India, okay, which do not have basic road connectivity. Now that creates a lot of problems for those villages. Why? Well, there are many farmers in those villages. After they harvest their crop, they want to take their crop to markets to sell them. How would they take their crops to markets if they do not have good road connectivity? Plus, many services, many banking services, many other forms of services do not reach these villages because these villages do not have road connectivity. Now, if many services do not reach these villages because of lack of road connectivity, do you think that would be an example of inclusive growth? Not at all. That would be a violation of inclusive growth. Okay? So, PM Gram Sadak Yojana is basically a step in the direction of inclusive growth. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Okay? That is why, to give road connectivity to unconnected villages. Now, this PM Gram Sadak Yojana is not new. Okay? It was launched in 2003. And since then, 4 phases have been launched. First phase was launched in 2003. Second phase was launched in 2013. Third phase was launched in 2019. And now government is ready to launch 4th phase. And in that 4th phase, government is saying, well, there shall be a QR code. Okay? The idea is, the purpose is all weather connectivity for unconnected villages. Now, there is a population criteria for a village being eligible for this program. Okay? Villages which have a population of 500 or more in plain areas, or 300 or more in hilly areas, 250 I guess, 250 or 300, you can check from notes, okay, in hilly areas or northeastern states. Okay, 500 more in plain areas, 300 or more in northeastern or hilly areas would be eligible for road connectivity under this scheme. Okay, all weather roads would be built. Now, this is a centrally sponsored scheme. We have discussed this, central sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. So, this is a centrally sponsored scheme, which means that the funding for this project would be shared between center and states. So, generally for plain areas, it is central government would contribute 60% and states would contribute 40%. But for hilly areas and northeast, the ratio becomes 90 to 10. Okay, and 4th phase has been launched recently. That's all you need to know. Okay, and now let's quickly jump to the last news item of the day, and that is Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, about Non-Proliferation Treaty, you see, America was the first country to have an atomic bomb. Then USSR, Soviet Union, got atomic bomb. Then it was UK, then it was France, and then in 1964 it was China. And what happened was that the news came out that more and more countries would want a nuclear weapon to protect themselves. Okay. Now, Americans, Europeans got worried about this, because if more and more countries would have nuclear weapons, someone or the other would use them one day or the other. Okay. And we all know how devastating nuclear weapons are, right? So everyone should not have a right to possess them, because if everyone has nuclear weapons, it is a matter of time that one irresponsible country would use them. Okay. And that would create a lot of problems. Clear? Therefore, it was felt that, look, whichever country or whatever countries who have made a nuclear weapon, well, let's allow them to have nuclear weapons. But no other country would be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Okay. That was the decision made. Okay. So what happened was, they said in 1967 that, look, the countries that have made nuclear weapons before 1967, well, they can have nuclear weapons. That includes USA, Soviet Union, UK, France, China. Apart from these 5 countries, no other country can have nuclear weapons. Okay. And to basically guarantee that, countries would sign on an agreement. Now, why would countries sign on an agreement in which they won't be allowed to have nuclear weapons? Okay. So America said, and Europe said, that, look, nuclear energy is not only used for making bombs. Nuclear energy can also be used for making electricity. And there are many civilian purposes for which nuclear energy can be used. Now, those civilian purposes require a very high level of technology. Okay. America said that we will give you that technology, but you have to promise us that you won't make nuclear weapons. Okay. So countries won't make nuclear weapons in exchange for technology to build nuclear reactors for civilian purposes, not weapons purposes, civilian purposes. Okay. Many countries agreed, and that agreement was called Non-Proliferation Treaty. Okay. Now, currently this treaty is quite controversial. Now, what is that controversy? I'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about Non-Proliferation Treaty. Okay. So, Non-Proliferation Treaty. So, as per Non-Proliferation Treaty, okay, before 1st January 1967, countries that have made nuclear weapons, those would be called nuclear weapon states. These were US, UK, USSR, France, and China. So these would be called nuclear weapon states, and all the other countries would be called non-nuclear weapon states. Okay. Now the agreement was that these countries would share technology, share nuclear technology. In exchange, these non-nuclear weapon states would give up any aspiration for atomic bomb. That was done. Okay, that was done. And well, now currently this treaty, Non-Proliferation Treaty, has 191 members. Okay, including a country called Iran. Iran signed this treaty in 1968, and since 1970s, well, this treaty is, it has been following this treaty. So Iran cannot possess nuclear weapons as per this treaty. But Israel attacked Iran based on the assumption or based on some intelligence input that Iran is making a nuclear weapon. That would be a violation of this Non-Proliferation Treaty. Interestingly though, Israel is not part of this Non-Proliferation Treaty. Okay, and that is quite an interesting thing. Iran, which is part of this treaty, which says I won't have any nuclear weapons, is being attacked by a country which has nuclear weapons and is not signatory to Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is a point that Iran is raising. Okay, that what sort of world is this? Clear? But nonetheless, so NPT. So the grand bargain of NPT is, well, you give us technology, we will give you a promise that we won't make nuclear weapons. Okay. Now, who would ensure that this country is not making nuclear weapons? There is an organization called International Atomic Energy Agency. Their inspectors would supervise and do surveillance in your country to check whether you are not secretly building a nuclear bomb. Okay. Plus, rights of all parties is, all parties who are signatories to NPT, they have a right to nuclear technology. Clear? 191 members. But there are some countries who are not part of this treaty, and they are India, Israel, Pakistan, South Sudan, which is again different, North Korea. And the case of North Korea is different. North Korea signed this treaty in 1985, but in 2003 got out of this treaty. And soon after, they built a nuclear bomb. The reason why these countries have not signed NPT is because they wanted to build a nuclear bomb, and they have built a nuclear bomb, right? So the irony is, well, nuclearly powered Israel, which is not a signatory to NPT, is attacking an NPT signatory nation, that is Iran, which has signed an agreement that says that we won't make nuclear bombs. Okay? Well, that's the case. Now, some more information about IAEA. So, International Atomic Energy Agency is a global organization that promotes peaceful use of nuclear energy, prevents its use for military purposes, and including nuclear weapons. Formed in 1957 under US President Dwight Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace proposal. It is autonomous, but it reports to UN General Assembly and Security Council. It has 178 members, including India. India is also a part of its decision-making authority, that is Board of Governors. Clear? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But I say this every time. It will add more value if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. Please do not forget to do that. And on that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.